the increase in human resources for health, and a stronger health system. Cuba as a country decided to focus on a health system in compromise to everything else. In Kenya, we have agreed that we have many other socio-economic agendas that we are focusing on. So I think we need to use our money wisely, stop any kind of corruption and leakages in the system, not have any counterfeits and fake products coming in, and have a system that's more robust and answerable. Reform NHIF to be more responsive to the needs of Kenyans so it can be trusted as an institution that will deliver UHC or better coverage.
Right.
None of these are in place right now. How are we going to reach there?
Right. We're talking about 100 doctors in various fields and as far as their specialties. We have 47 counties. You have millions of Kenyans.
Right.
Will the impact of this skill they bring be felt in your view?
In my opinion, it will. Talk to a mother who lives in Wajir, who has an emergency cesarean section, a need for that, and there is no anesthetist in Wajir. You know what one anesthetist can do to those? So the impact will be felt. If we have selected the right specialist, which I think the ministry must have assessed, and also our regulatory board, Kenya Medical Practitioners Dentist Board, must have assessed the need. These 100 may be small in number, but the impact will be felt because thousands of Kenyans will get services which they did not enjoy in these counties.
Yeah.
So it will make a difference.
This 171 specialists we already have that KMPDU says, why don't you employ them? Is it that the government does not have confidence in her own people?
Right. I think that's a good question, and I think this is where the lack of clarity shrouds everything that's going on. If the Kenyan specialists are being hard on about their salaries and are being very firm about being paid 300, 400, 500,000, and the government found a very good deal in Cuban doctors who are of good quality and of a reasonable price, then I think it's a great move.
Yeah.
The 800,000 and Job S is just a speculation. Once again, the ministry has been totally unclear about the cost of the 100 doctors annually.
Right.
All we get is speculations from media. If it's going to cost half or one-third of our Kenyan doctors, then I think they will make an impact in some of the counties. But at the same time, I agree that the ministry and the county government should make an extra effort to absorb our local doctors. Remember, resources are limited.
Yeah.
County governments are also strained with their budgets.
Yes.
So this is an economic question in trying to promote affordable healthcare for Kenyans.
For Kenyans. Final question. You're with private healthcare, the private sector, and you've been on the spot because getting healthcare from a private hospital is expensive. And we're looking at making healthcare affordable. That's why you have people traveling abroad, because when it comes to public service and healthcare, not too many have confidence in some instances for some conditions. What is your role to bring down that price, to bridge the gap?
Thank you, Annie. I think that question is spot on. The most expensive element in providing private healthcare is human resources for health. So I wish the government even had a deeper stakeholder engagement on these Cuban doctors, because if it's good for the public sector and appropriate, it could also be good for the private sector. Maybe we should have been given an opportunity to try and absorb some more. Maybe we could have brought in 50 more and we could have reduced the cost of healthcare. Having said that, private sector has huge input costs. We need to pay salaries, we have a huge supply chain cost, and we have to ensure we are sustainable. Not to mention so many non-paying clients that come to our private facilities that end up not clearing their bills. All this is responsible for the kind of costs that we currently face in our country.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Amit Thakar, for joining us on The Big Story. He is the chair of the Kenya Healthcare Federation, which is under KEPSA, giving us his insights on this move by the Kenyan government, striking that deal with Cuba to bring in the doctors. We'll have to wait and see how this plays out, Sharon.
Right. Many thanks, Sophia Wanuna, and great insights indeed that we get from there. And just in case we seem to get lost on the figures that we have, the specialization of the doctors who are set to be coming to the country next month. Let's just take a look at these areas of specializations and the mix of doctors that we expect to come to the country. This ship seems, we remain to see whether this ship actually will sail following that petition that was filed in the courts today. So set to come, we have 53 family physicians from the Cuban doctors, 9 ICU physicians, 5 general surgeons and 5 orthopedic surgeons. Also included in that number are 5 nephrologists who deal with kidney, and 3 radiologists, 3 cardiologists, 3 plastic surgeons, 3 urologists, 3 anesthesiologists, and 1 endocrinologist, and 1 dermatologist, sorry, these are heavy words, 1 ophthalmologist, and 1 gastroenterologist, as well as 1 neurosurgeon. That is the number of the different specialists that we are expecting to be coming to the country next month. And what the Cabinet Secretary was saying is that these are specialists that are set to be deployed to the low-level hospitals in the counties just to make healthcare, very accessible at that very primary level. And I just want to get deeper into this discussion now with my panelists who have joined me here in studio, and I want to reintroduce them to you. Joining me is Dr. Alan Ochanji, who is the Deputy Chairperson of KMPDU, that is the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union. I'm also joined by Alan Maleche, who is the CEO of KELIN. KELIN is the Kenya Legal and Ethical Issues Network on HIV and AIDS, and really will be speaking from a rights of patients point of view. And thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me. And I just want to start with you, Mr. Maleche, before we get to the union, point of view in all of this. Is there no good, really, that we can get from this move to import the Cuban doctors?
Your question, would you be kind enough to repeat it?
All right. And this whole debate, this whole move of bringing in Cuban doctors has been received by mixed reactions. And a lot of people saying we need the specialists, especially to go down to the mashinani, but our doctors saying that this is showing discrimination to the local doctors who have not been employed. What do you feel about this whole move? What is your sentiments about it?
Thank you, Sharon, for having me on the show this evening. My first sentiment is that this is not a war between the Kenyan doctors and the Cuban doctors. This is a concern about how the government, particularly the Ministry of Health, has handled the process of bringing foreign doctors into the country. The concern which the medical union has is about being involved, being part of the process, and that clearly has not happened. There has been no transparency, there has been no sharing of information apart from what people are learning in the media, and that only leads to speculation. We have a constitution that talks about the right to access public information. We heard about the minister saying there's an MOU that has been signed. I checked the website of the Ministry of Health, I checked the website of the Council of Governors, and there's nothing available around the details that you have just shown on TV. So that's the first concern and sentiment that many people in the health sector and also generally the public are keen to understand. What is this MOU? What gap is it coming to fill? Are we answering a political question? Are we answering a medical question? Are we answering an economic question? And without that information, it leads to a lot of speculation, a lot of anxiety, and of course, when you hear that certain groups of people are in a certain job grade which you're not offering to the current doctors who need employment, then that definitely could make a case for argument around the issue of discrimination.
All right, so the whole move has been shrouded in mystery, and I want to bring in Dr. Ochanji from the KMPDU union, and this has been going on for quite a number of weeks now. Have there been any engagement between you and the ministry in trying, or has the ministry tried to explain this other than in the public gallery, which is what has been happening, to understand the goodwill that they're trying to sell to Kenyans about this?
Probably I'd want to concur with my fellow panelists by saying that most of the information regarding the whole Cuban story, we get them from the media. And so we haven't not been involved in most of the discussion. But let me state some facts here that, one, we have medical practitioners who are qualified and licensed in Kenyan territory who are not employed. And again, we have heard through the media and pronouncement from the government circles that through government-to-government initiative, they're going to bring in foreign doctors. We've also seen they've gone ahead to initiate a process of memorandum of understanding with the counties to allow deployment to all the areas. Well, we want to say that we don't have a problem with Cuban doctors. As doctors and as medics, we are in sort of a community of professionals where we can work anywhere in the world. But before you work anywhere in the world, there's always a laid-down process as to how that can go about. Myself, today, I can't just wake up and go and work, for example, in South Africa. And so even in Kenya, there's a way, the laws are made in such a way that it protects its citizen when it comes to availability of qualification. And in this case, I want to say that the Kenyan Constitution, being a Kenyan citizen, and the Immigration Act and Public Service laws, they give priority to a Kenyan where there are comparable qualification. In this case, we are seeing that despite overwhelming evidence that we have qualification locally, our government has gone ahead to secure services of foreign doctors. So our major concern is why bypass locally trained, qualified doctors and go for foreign colleagues. And I would say that even in terms of getting permit, sections of the Citizenship and Immigration Act specified very clearly in terms of the classes of permits you can get. And one of the reasons that's why you can be given a permit to work in a given country is if the qualification you have is not available locally. In this case, we're having colleagues who are coming in despite the fact that those qualifications are here with us. And if I could give you the facts, we have up to 171 specialist doctors who are with us in this country. We have up to close to 1,600 of medical doctors, dentists, and pharmacists who are equally trained here and they're jobless. And so in all these things, we see discrimination, because again, we've heard that they are going to be given a remuneration package that is way beyond what we get. We've had statements of being in job group S. Personally, I'm a specialist. I'm not anywhere near that job group. And so that go against the principles of Section Article 141 of fair remuneration and right to anything against discrimination. We've heard they're going to be given houses. In fact, some counties have already made plans on how they're going to house the foreign doctors.